Did you know that the Irish public sector has a legal obligation to uphold the human rights of everyone in our society? I didn't either, so I'm going to explain it to you. Hi, my name is Momoba Ogoro, founder of GIRM and social psychologist. And if you want to learn how to unify across differences, especially if you're in public sector, make sure you're subscribing to our channel. So what exactly is the public sector? I like to describe it as basically the backbone of society. It often goes undetected or unnoticed in our daily lives, but we see it everywhere. It's essentially the part of the economy that's owned by the government and operated by the government. It's everything from schools, hospitals, roads, law enforcement, public libraries, etc. Essentially, it's all the things and the stuff that serves the public good and our wider society and safety. Many of those who work in public sector do so because they believe that serving the community is something that is right and something that should be done. Whether it's keeping our streets safe, providing essential services, knowing that their work makes a difference in society drives a lot of people to work in public sector. And of course, the stable salary as well. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna front. The public sector maintains the everyday functioning of society. And it's like the hotbed of innovation, technology, and allows us to move forward and adapt as a collective and as a society. Generally speaking, public sector services are funded by the taxpayers' money, which means that they are accountable to the public, i.e. you and I. That's why transparency and accountability is so important to public service and public sector. Ultimately, the public sector is about people. People who are not only dedicated to serving their communities and wider society, but also the institutions in which they work in. These institutions not only have to provide us with the everyday services and essential services that maintain our society, but they are legally obligated to do so, and do so in a way that upholds the human rights of each and every one of us. And that's where we cue in the public sector duty. Well, according to the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commissioner, and I quote, "The public sector duty is a legal obligation on public bodies contained in Section 42 of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission Act 2014, to have regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, promote equality of opportunity, and protect the human rights of public sector staff and service users." And who does this apply to? It encompasses a wide range of public bodies in Ireland, including government departments, local authorities, healthcare providers, and educational institutions. And even when public services are outsourced to third parties, public bodies are still responsible for ensuring that equality and human rights are upheld in these standards. But how do public bodies ensure compliance with this duty? Well, there's a process that was created by the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commissioner. This is the Assess, Address, and Report process. Firstly, public bodies must assess the relevant equality and human rights issues in their strategic plans and considering their functions, purpose, and available resources that they have to actually uphold them. Next, they have to address the issues by implementing policies, plans, action plans aimed to promote equality and promoting human rights within their institution and in their organization. This isn't just a one-stop or a one-hit effort, it's ongoing processes and ongoing integration to the everyday plans and their everyday cycles. And lastly, report. Accountability is key to ensuring the obligation is being held. Public bodies must report annually on their progress and achievements in meeting these obligations, ensuring transparency and public scrutiny. By collecting data and evidence on public bodies, we can track the performance and the outcomes of this public sector duty and show areas of improvement. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commissioner plays a huge and vital role in providing guidance to support and train the public bodies on fulfilling this duty. And there's going to be more information, but put it down in a link in the bio so you can actually understand what it is if it applies to you and your institution. So you're probably thinking, how does a small social enterprise like GIRM, what do we have to do with all of this? Well, to eliminate discrimination, promote equality, and protect the human rights of each and every one of us, particularly on a behavioral sense, a one-to-one sense, public sector staff need to have intercultural competence skills to provide the best quality service to their service users. And last year, we wanted to see if public servants in Ireland had the intercultural competence skills, particularly when working with service users from underrepresented or marginalized backgrounds, such as migrants. So with the support of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commissioner, or IREX, Human Rights and Equality Grant Scheme 2022-2023, we developed a research project on intercultural competence in the Irish public sector as a part of their public sector duty. You probably already know this at this stage, but for those who are new here, intercultural competence is essentially the behavioral component to bridging or unifying across differences. I will leave there should be something around here on a link to a video of what we explain or what I explain intercultural competence on a behavioral note. And more widely, interculturalism has garnered extensive research attention when it comes to places like the US and more widely in different countries in Europe. However, it's relatively new in Ireland, and the concept of intercultural competence is something that I'm fighting for in different areas, particularly public sector in Ireland. So we wanted to kind of look into it on a deeper level and have research to support it. And that's why we actually applied for this grant scheme, to kind of see it as a part of the public sector duty as well. And in recognizing the importance of fostering intercultural competence, particularly within the public sector, we kind of seized the opportunity to develop a research project, a sort of research-informed intercultural competence training project to really understand it in this particular sector. This initiative was supported by the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commissioner, again, through their grant scheme 2022-2023, and it aimed to fill a critical role in understanding intercultural competence in public sector, understanding first and foremost, and in practice too. The first goal of the project was to conduct an extensive research on intercultural competence practices within 4 participating public sector organizations. The next step is what we did was we developed a needs assessment tool in order to kind of understand it within the participants. And it encompassed short questionnaires and interviews that accurately gauged intercultural competence within themselves, but also within their teams as well. And we used our model of knowledge, attitudes, and skills. It's not our model, it's a model that's used globally within understanding intercultural competence to assess the intercultural competence of the participating organizations. Again, knowledge is the recognition of one's own culture, i.e. cultural awareness, and the awareness of other cultures and the understandings of key aspects of interculturalism, such as intercultural competence, intercultural communication, intersectionality, different aspects of diversity, and let's say the 9 grounds of differences of diversity as well, and upholding such rights. Attitudes is the understanding of one's attitudes, the norms, the values towards cultures, which are different from their own. This is a development of cultural perspective taking, empathy building, and respect of different and diverse identities and values. And this is why you are also motivated to discover more and understand the differences, the different perspectives, knowing ways to really sit in that ambiguity and those nuanced perspectives and identities. Finally, the skills are the behavioral component to compromise and being comfortable with that discomfort when it comes to miscommunication, when it comes to lack of understanding, and when it comes to even making mistakes across lines of differences. This essentially is a skill to reconcile, particularly when faced with uncertainty and fear along those lines of differences. And again, if you want more, do check out our other video that I just explained intercultural competence from a social psychological point of view. And lastly, when we did all of this assessments and when we did all of this data collecting, shout out to Bea and Umit, who were on it like a hot bonnet in terms of all the data collection and all the assessments, we finally collected and analyzed all the data and individual evaluations. We put them into reports and we sent them out to the organizations to kind of assess further steps in supporting by way of training, by way of consultancy, and how they can improve in terms of their intercultural skills based on those needs assessments. Well, a total of 42 participants from 4 participating organizations or public bodies took part within this short study. And of course, we understand 42 for organizations. That's not a reflection of the entire population or public sector in Ireland. We get that, but it's an initial step to understanding this relatively new concept in Ireland. So we understand that's a mitigation to this kind of relatively small study, but the findings were very, very interesting, and I'm ready to share that with you. So what we found was that despite the overall moderate results in terms of knowledge and attitudes, the findings indicated that there was a lack of self-awareness regarding participants' own cultural context, potentially resulting in a limited pursuit of intercultural interactions. That's probably academic jargon to kind of explain that sometimes when you are in a space where you think that your way of seeing the world is the normal way of seeing the world, sometimes the interacting with those who are different can be difficult because those differences goes against your norms. So a lack of self-awareness and understanding that your way of seeing the world is not the normal, it's a way of seeing the world. Your cultural context is not the normal, it's a cultural context. The findings also indicated a significant level of knowledge and awareness regarding the benefits of diversity and intercultural contact. But it also showed that the knowledge is not effectively translating into positive attitudes and particularly positive skills in reconciling across differences. In other words, while participants demonstrated a solid foundation and knowledge when it came to diversity and strong attitudes in supporting diversity, it didn't really result to action. It didn't really result into the behavioral component in engaging across lines of differences and those tangible outcomes. And yes, policies exist. Everything needs to be on paper. We need to write it down. We need to assess, address, and report. But the behavioral components to positively engaging with diversity and differences was what was lacking in the outcomes of this particular study. And one person particularly said, and this was a quote that really struck me particularly, "The fear of getting it wrong actually makes us shut down and reverse. Don't ask anything at all." And I'm sure people won't find it offensive, but we become inactive instead of trying to get to know people. This was a public servant saying that themselves. And that quote was a powerful quote, one that really struck me as to the importance of the behavioral component when it comes to enacting public sector duty. It's important to have a top-down address, assess, and report element of it. Those things need to be there to really ensure that these policies, these implementation plans, these action plans are really held. But on a human-to-human behavioral and policy in practice point, we need to have public servants to have intercultural competence skills so they can not only be comfortable in environments where there is uncertainty, where there are so many differences, but they can actively engage with the service users and the public like you and me. They can engage with those of us from all walks of life and all environments, and they have the confidence to do so. So what's next? Well, let me break it down to you. First of all, this project, again, is not a project that represents the entire population of Ireland. We understand that. It was a first project to kind of understand intercultural competence, give us a sort of reason to be like, hey, we did this. Here's a bit of evidence that this is important when it comes to Irish public sector and for wider society as well. And this project was about understanding how public sector can better connect with diverse and underrepresented communities, particularly in line with the public sector duty. And at GARM, we believe that getting public sector to be involved in conversations with community, with individuals, with wider society, it's taking a huge step towards an inclusive Ireland where every one of us can belong. And by having long-term intercultural strategies, skills, and competence, we're not just ticking a box, we're building infrastructure and building a society that both on a behavioral and a structural level, we can embrace a diverse and embrace a society where not only public servants feel confident to do their job, but one where we can actually unify across our differences. And while this study was kind of difficult to do at some parts of it, it's kind of difficult to engage as a small organization, to engage with such big organizations. We learned so much in the process, and we learned that there's so much that still needs to be done in this area. And if you want to read the full report as to all that happened throughout that process, the learning, the outcomes, everything like that, make sure that you go to our description right now. I'm waiting for you. Done. Make sure that you go to our website, it's going to be in the description, and read that full report. This research is something that is very, very early stages in Ireland particularly, and we kind of found it difficult to find robust research. So we're going to still be on this radar going forward, meeting people, engaging to really kind of deeply more understand it within the Irish public sector and offer training, consultancy, and support to organizations that need these sort of skills and need these sort of engagements within their environments. So again, public sector duty is something that every public sector organization in Ireland needs to uphold, and we're ready and here to support those who need to do so in a way that on a behavioral sense in engaging with different service users and different society members at large.